Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have got a fantastic show for you. I think. We haven't done the show yet. I can't really say for sure, but it seems like it's a good one. We've got a ton of Kentucky political stories to run through. We've got an awesome guest, Jamie Lucke, the editor of the Kentucky Lantern, which is a new news source covering the Frankfurt hijinks. After the interview, we'll close out with a bit of a call to action. But what I'm most excited about right now, we have an awesome slate of co-hosts for you this evening. So I know you're tired of my face, so we like to spice it up, bring in some new faces. Really excited to have with us Kimberly Cecil Jones, back from a bit of a hiatus. And then we've got Chris Preece, whose name might sound familiar. He actually ran for Congress in the 6th District here and in the Bluegrass. And so we are really excited to have him joining both the board of Progress Kentucky and our rotation of co-hosts here on Kernels of Truth. So really excited about tonight's show. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? Why should you care about the color of Kentucky's politics? Why do we say purple, not blue, if you do care about politics? Because we're the Kernels of Truth, folks, and we're going to tell you the truth. The truth is, Kentucky right now is a deeply red state, and if you're watching what's going on in Frankfurt, you will just you'll know what I'm talking about, right? So the GOP supermajorities seem to get kind of whatever they want because they can overturn our good governor's vetoes without really breaking a sweat, and kind of get what their corporate backers and cultural warriors really want done in Frankfurt. And we're tired of it. We need folks who are willing to connect the dots between unpopular policies and the politicians that bring them to us, and that's what Progress Kentucky seeks to do. So our modest effort once a week to go live and share some information with you about what's happening and how we can engage. If you like that work, if you want a commonwealth that works for all of us, please join Progress Kentucky, support our campaign to turn our commonwealth purple. Because again, before we get to blue from red, I think it's going to take some work to even get to purple. So you can make a donation at our Secure Act Blue website. You can spread the word that we're tired of the GOP ignoring the needs of regular folk in Kentucky, and we think our commonwealth is worth fighting for. So let's get into the show. Let's check into with our co-hosts. This is one thing we like to do here. Let us know who you are, where you are, and what your protest sign says today. You there on the internet, you also please take part. Put it in the comments. What would you be protesting today? What does your rally sign say? What's your kind of political message of the day? So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, which is, of course, a Lexington suburb. And my protest sign says today, enough with the GOP MLK hypocrisy, which I think is we saw a kind of just a sea of it on Monday, and I think we'll touch base on some of it in just a minute. But yeah, that's what I'd be protesting right now. How about you, Kimberly?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, yes, it's great to be back with everyone. I'm Kimberly Cecil Jones, and I'm coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County, largest city in Kentucky, largest county in Kentucky. And my protest sign says today, pay attention to what they do. I know Rachel Maddow would always say, don't pay a lot of attention to what they say. Pay attention to what they do. And I think that's a main component that's missing right here. So that's my protest sign today, Aaron.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that, Kimberly. Thank you for rejoining the crew here on Kernels of Truth. And then now bringing in Chris Preece. So, Chris, welcome to the show. I guess welcome back to the show, right? Because you have been, in fact, on this show previously. Our alert viewers will recall back when you were running for the 6th District, we had you on and had a conversation with you, and we're pretty excited about your campaign. Want to give folks the quick story how'd that all play out?
Oof, yeah, I'm the only man to lose to Jeff Young.
So sorry, Chris.
Yeah. I'll go down in the history books for that. It's fine. But thank you all for having me and bringing me on. I must have made quite an impression through that campaign. We were really scrappy and did a lot with our $35,000 that we ran on. So
yeah, that is an unheard of amount to run an actual campaign for Congress on. That is definitely bootstraps, and impressive that you ran that campaign with that amount. And obviously, we're sorry it turned out the way it did. It's an uphill district no matter how you slice it. The 6th district, which of course has been sliced up quite a bit. And the Kentucky GOP did not do us any favors in redistricting of giving us a shot at making that an actual toss-up district, unfortunately.
And part of me feels lucky that I didn't get into U.S. Congress after the shenanigans of the GOP can't even vote to get their leader in, and all that craziness. But it's okay. We'll refocus and come together, and still here doing good work. I'm coming to you all from Berea, Kentucky, so good old Madison County, and actually grew up in Martin County, so far eastern Kentucky. I still got family there and go back there. Now, as far as my protest sign, I've got Be Union Strong. Always believe in unions, and I'm a part of a union and have a print shop that's becoming union, which I'm very excited about. And so unions are great. It gives good working folks a voice in our labor, which takes us from our families and also helps provide us for to have a life. So definitely supporting the unions and feeling that.
Awesome. Super appropriate for the first thing I wanted to just chat a little bit about, right? So Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the kind of the day National Day of Service, that was on Monday. The man would have been 94 years old, and I think really a phenomenal day to reflect on kind of his legacy, and the work that needs to be done for the the civil rights movement that he once led. Obviously, he was an incredibly strong supporter of the unions. And unions were quite an important supporter of him. The March on Washington, one of the the primary funders of that march were the unions. A. Philip Randolph, and a really important Black union leader, was really critical to that effort. So the unions were kind of, he was side by side with them. Of course, he was helping to organize sanitation workers, I think in Memphis, tragically, when he was murdered. So it's really an important piece of his legacy that I feel is often ignored because it is politically expedient for the folks who want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. Day once a year and his legacy once a year. And they love to talk about the dream and the content of your character, and but not really about the kind of hard, really just war on poverty that he was, kind of seeking to morph the movement into. I don't know, Kimberly, Chris, how did this year strike you? Are there any things that kind of caught your attention as the nation marked, MLK Day? Is this thing on?
I hear you. Kimberly, do you want to go first?
Well, since you asked, thank you so much. Yes, this year, the holiday seemed a bit lackluster to me, I would say. I don't know if somewhat we're allowing Dr. King's memory to dissipate somewhat. However, everybody wants to quote Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It takes a lot to be a doctorate of anything. I just want to say that. And so it's much more respectful to say Dr. Martin Luther King. And a lot of people don't know that he was jailed almost 30 times, 29 times to be exact. A lot of people don't even know that he delivered over 2,500 speeches, and most of them he never needed a manuscript or even notes to do the speeches that he did. And that today, yes, the I Have a Dream speech, which is now framed, I forgot the person that actually has ownership, but it is worth over $25 million, 59 years later. So I don't really see the excitement. And I think that people need to be more educated about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He used to come to Louisville quite often. This is one of his favorite places to be. And my late grandfather, the Reverend Dr. Pastor G.K. Offit, was very, very close with him, stayed at their house, all of that. But he was a man with flaws, of course, but his legacy will live on. But we must also remember when we talk about Dr. King that, yeah, at that time, he was the most hated man in America. They thought he was a kook. They thought something was wrong with him, actually. They looked at him pretty much like a rebel, and also classified him as a terrorist because he was empowering Black people to think for themselves and to want freedom. And freedom is not always being chained up on a plantation. Sometimes we have jailed or put chains on our minds and our thought processes. And then I would also, and lastly, like to mention that he was J. Edgar Hoover's #1 person that was surveilled, harassed, and many other things. And yes, I knew I had one more thing. The majority of Black Americans did not even like Martin Luther King at that time. So I think all of us need to go back and have a little bit more history about Dr. King and what he stood for, because if people really, really, really delve deep and not just Google him for a couple of paragraphs, you could come to understand who he was and what he truly stood for. Back to you, Aaron.
Yeah, no, that's a lot, Kimberly, and I'm glad you shared that with us for sure. That idea that he was, the most hated man in America, high profile certainly, but no good rabble rouser, because he was fighting for equality and he was fighting for better conditions for the folks who had been taken advantage of and taken for granted for just decades. So, and it wasn't just in the South, obviously, as well. But yeah, I saw historically there was a march on Frankfurt that he led, which was awesome. I did not know that. I also, and maybe Chris, you respond to this. So the sea of politicians taking advantage of his kind of airier quotes to avoid the kind of harder hitting elements of his agenda, his social justice agenda. You just sit back and wait. Charles Booker, I think, called it on social media. He's like, the hypocrisy will be coming. Just wait, people. And of course, we saw, Rand Paul, I think, jump in kind of immediately, talking about how important it is that people come together, and people just need to come together. Rand Paul, of course, who is the guy who every single Congress is the first to introduce a national right to work law, right? So a bill to, make it sure that unions don't have power across the country. That's his #1 priority legislatively. And then he also, of course, is, a huge opponent of, a living wage, or even just raising the pathetic federal minimum wage. So he got out there. We also saw, I think, Andy Barr, share some, again, light and airy quote. Andy Barr, of course, who could not vote for the John Lewis, Voting Rights Act in just the last Congress. So, these guys who just have no claim to King's legacy, out there just trying to show that no, really, we really like unity. I don't know, Chris, what do you think of your one-time opponent Andy Barr's view of Martin Luther King Jr.? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you, Kimberly.
The hypocrisy is thick. It's really nice to think about Dr. Martin Luther King's dream and what he stood for, and take these quotes, as you said, and just kind of repurpose them and give off the impression that they are for unity, that they are for making a better America for everybody. And they do this stuff in their campaign all the time, and so seeing it on MLK Day, it just is a little bit harder to swallow than when it's during the campaign, because we know that they don't mean it, because we see the actions that they do when the bills that they try to pass, like you mentioned, Rand Paul just tries to have the right to work law nationally, and Andy Barr's the same way. He's constantly pushing for big banks and big pharma to have control over whatever they want, to be able to basically have monopolies and crush the little people. And Dr. Martin Luther King was absolutely against the things that they constantly try to pass into law. So it's stings a little. Like it's I don't want to say it's laughable. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth if you're actually paying attention and you see the things that they put out there. They're disingenuous, and that they just don't mean it. They don't, and they're just trying to keep a mirage or a facade up for the rest of us.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was one thing I found to be like super offensive. Ryan Quarles, I don't know if folks saw this. Ryan Quarles was going to be the day after the Reverend Doctor's celebration. He was going to be co-headlining an event alongside one of the police officers who shot Breonna Taylor. Right. So one of the police officers who I think was allowed to retire, but has written a book, and, is, of course, the real story of Breonna Taylor, which, if you want to look for the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the work of that movement, that is, the Say Her Name movement, Breonna Taylor's efforts to get justice for her, which, none of the Republican politicians in Kentucky are willing to do. And Quarles was willing to help this guy sell his book, to make him a hero and the real story of what happened. And of course, these, Bowling Green women's Republican group was more than happy to have this guy come and tell his, story, and Quarles was going to show up. Of course, the backlash was significant. Quarles ultimately, as we'll see there, decided to reschedule his event, so didn't want to be alongside that officer from the raid, and rescheduled, but didn't say anything about the actual value of Breonna Taylor's life, and the challenge of the fact that no one's been held accountable, and just really is just pretty disgusting to watch it, for sure. This guy who's one of the three front runners for sure in the race for the GOP nomination for governor, was willing to put his name up there on that event until there was some backlash. Kimberly, any thoughts on that one?
What's the question one more time?
Oh, just about Quarles and kind of him being willing to headline with one of the Breonna Taylor officers at that event in Bowling Green.
Yeah. It's almost blasphemous, I mean, it just, and I'm going to segue back to Dr. Martin Luther King. He said we must learn to live together, or we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. And I mean, it's just a lot of foolery going on all the time. And why would you have one of the officers that actually murdered, is actually what it was, not just killed, but murdered Breonna Taylor? I mean, if I was a politician, I wouldn't even want to touch any of those officers with a 100-foot pole. I don't know. It's just they're always doing something crazy, Aaron and Chris. It's just constant.
Yeah.
And it's just like a bad reality show day by day.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the news stories we want to cover beyond the kind of MLK reflections. Really important. This one I'll just do quickly. The governor is popular. Our governor is popular. Again, his like 60% approval rating. And then we've seen the UVA Center for Politics has just ranked all these off-year governors races. And I think the only one that has signs of hope for Democrats, because these are, I think, mostly Southern races right now. So it's Mississippi, it's Louisiana, and Kentucky who have these off-year governors races, and only in Kentucky is that a lean Democrat seat. So these are all bright red states. Actually, two of them right now have Democratic governors. So besides Governor Beshear, there's John Bel Edwards in Louisiana, but he's term limited, and it doesn't seem like it's a challenge for another Democrat to grab that seat. Again, very deeply red state. But yeah, I was happy to see that at least leaned Democrat folks, and of course we've covered in the past just how popular he is, because I think people see that he's working hard for folks every single day, that he's doing the best that he can to kind of help the common folks in our state, in our commonwealth rather. So I don't know, I just was buoyed by that news. Kimberly or Chris, any thoughts about it?
The the governor being, our governor being popular, it doesn't surprise me. He's done a really good job. We and we look at our government to provide service for us, to protect us, to do the right thing, and he continuously tries to do that and put people in positions that are going to do a good job. Which can segue us to the next story in a moment. But he has done such a good job and really led with his heart. Like during COVID, we saw that he would do the we called it Uncle Andy time. Me and my friends, and so like he would give us these updates. He would go over all the information that he knew, really try to keep us in the know. And I think that has really carried us, or is going to carry him into potentially winning again. And I hope he does. I think he's done a good job, and he deserves more time in that position.
Yeah, I concur. Who's that there? Who do you have as a co-host, Chris?
Sorry, my son Orion ran in for a moment and started grabbing some things in the room and then ran back out.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm excited about the race. We'll see what happens. He can't look past Jeff Young in the primary. Obviously, Chris, we can't.
Watch out! He will personally take $100,000 to send out a last minute mailer, and that'll do him in.
Kimberly, any thoughts about our popular governor and his re-election prospects?
I believe it's going to be a tight race. Very, very much love Governor Andy Beshear, most definitely. One of the most favorable governors in Kentucky's history, even more favorable than his dad, Steve Beshear. I think he's going to do great. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of grassroots. It's going to take a lot of field organization. And I know that when I worked for his campaign before, it was a very, very aggressive campaign. I'm talking about it was so aggressive. I would come home every day and I could barely make it up my steps. I was a deputy field organizer. So I believe we can do that again. It may have to be more so aggressive this time as well. And we just have to make sure that he is our governor. We have to do everything we possibly can. And also put Colonel Pam Stevenson as Attorney General. She has no challenger at this moment.
Yeah. So she's, presumptive nominee. We you gonna get her on the show for us? You gonna get Representative Colonel Pam back on the show? Kimberly, can you make that happen? Kimberly,
Uh-oh.
are you disappearing?
Spinny wheel.
Oh no. She's begging off. The second I asked her to do something, where'd she go? All right. I hold the space. I think we'll get Representative Colonel Pam on the show. She's been on the show before. She's fantastic. Doug is excited to watch the Republican candidates go after each other. There's been a bit of news on that front this week. The empty chair commercial that Kelly Craft has been sharing. She will not fess up to actually, she will not tell the media what empty chair she's personally experienced in her family's life. So that's interesting. But we do have a couple other stories we want to get to. We also have an amazing guest, so we've been a little bit slow here. So Chris, let's go ahead and throw it to you to talk about the other big news that happened on MLK Day.
Yeah, so one of our favorite folks that's went through the political circle. He's been in the Kentucky. He was a Kentucky state representative for a while, and we mentioned that Andy Beshear likes to put very qualified and competent people in positions of power to do their job, because we need government to do their job and have things function. Well, Charles Booker has been put in the position to be the in the lead of Kentucky's Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and Community Involvement. I think this is an absolute fantastic position for him. So just to read the job description for this office shall have primary responsibility to establish policies, priorities, and practices in the executive branch to enable and expand social service programs of faith-based and community nonprofit organizations to the extent permitted by law. So, I'm sure some churches in your community and some nonprofits in your community that are doing terrific work, and he is going to be filling this space to help make sure that they get the resources that they need, and help expand that. And for many folks that we have in poverty, who are food insecure. I've taught high school chemistry for a long time, and I see a lot of nonprofits that come in and work with the schools to help out, and make sure that we have that we're able to provide additional services for students, not just education in the classroom, but they get extra food, they get access to backpacks and clothes and shoes and things that they need that maybe they can't get at home because of tough situations that they could find themselves in. So Charles Booker has a huge heart and very compassionate and wants to help people, and I think that is really going to help propel him and really making sure that the most the folks in the most need will get the services that they need and have more access to that, through trying to make sure that the funding gets out quickly to them, and maybe helping with more organizational processes and things. So I really think that this is a terrific add to our state government, and I'm really happy for Booker getting this position. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good add to his administration for sure. I think it's a smart move politically to have Booker kind of on your side and on your payroll. If you look around, the kind of from the hood to the holler, which I love that message. I love that vision. I think Andy's looking to kind of embody that in his administration. Of course, one of his senior advisors is Rocky Atkins. I think who's got the holler kind of all wrapped up, and that kind of Eastern Kentucky old school Democrat. He did amazing job on the campaign trail for Andy the first time around, and I'm sure he'll be kind of tasked to do that as well. So I think these folks watch this space. I think these folks will be very important to the governor's reelection efforts. And as you said earlier, and I can't agree more, like, we want him to have 4 more years to do continue the great work he's done. And I'm very hopeful that that's in fact what we will see. All right. So looks like we have lost Kimberly. They've had some technical difficulties. So we're going to move on to our guest. We got a story that we wanted Kimberly to cover about the Louisville Metro Council. We'll kind of hold that, I think, for next week and get in there. But we're behind schedule. So it's probably good that we're cutting the story. So really excited to bring to you folks Jamie Lucke. Jamie is the editor of the Kentucky Lantern. Jamie has more than 40 years of experience as a journalist in 4 states. Most of that time spent learning and writing about her birthplace, Kentucky. Her editorials for Lexington Herald Leader were recognized with a number of awards. She's also been honored with the Eastern Kentucky Leadership Foundation, the National Mental Health Association, the Alabama Education Association, and the Muskota Improvement Association. So she's a graduate of the University of Kentucky, mother to an adult daughter, happiest writing pithy headlines and rambling the Kentucky woods. Jamie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So if folks have not seen the Kentucky Lantern yet, tell us a little bit about kind of what is this news outlet, what is it seeking to do, and how are you guys going about it?
Well, they can see us at KentuckyLantern.com, and we are a nonprofit. No paywalls, no subscription fees. We're also a free news service, and that means that we invite other outlets, other media to republish our content at no charge. We're part of a larger national nonprofit called States Newsroom that has similar outlets in, we were the 31st state. There'll be a 32nd one soon. And most of the funding comes from foundations, philanthropic individuals, and also subscribers. Subscribers can donate. Readers can donate, but they don't have to.
That's fantastic. And so, obviously the news is really critical. It's, it's the information that kind of unites us, that allows us to kind of have a sense of kind of what's happening in our world, the kind of shared facts that we can organize our society around. I think we've seen personally, it's been very disconcerting to me to see how many news deserts are opening up across our country, with smaller local news outlets and newspapers going out of business because the math just it's awfully hard to work. The kind of traditional business model for small town newspapers just really doesn't work anymore. The social media has destroyed it all. And so, really interesting to see the new variants that are popping up. And, the paywall, phenomenon is frustrating, because, but I understand it. I spend my money to support local journalism, but it's awfully frustrating. You can't share a link with a friend knowing they're going to be able to read the same news you're getting because they're not a paid subscriber or whatever. So I'm very glad to see that you guys have figured out a model that kind of, circumvents that challenge. It seems like you're focusing primarily on Frankfurt, what's happening in the capital, but also because of your network of other nonprofit news outlets, you're able to cover some national news as well. It seems like. Tell us a little bit. What's your vision of how do you want to kind of inform our Commonwealth?
Well, those news deserts were very much the impetus for creating States Newsroom and the Kentucky Lantern. The losses in journalists have been especially heavy at the local and state level. There really hasn't been a big decline in national media, but the local newspapers and state capitol bureaus reporting on state government have really lost a lot of reporters, a lot of journalists in the last 10 to 20 years. And that is the gap that we seek to fill. I think we do think of all of Kentucky as our coverage area, though, not just Frankfurt. And one of the things we want to do is to to lift up the people who are affected by policy or lack of policy, to put people in the front of our stories, but also to hold those in power accountable. And that's really the classic mission of journalism, to bring some accountability to those in power, and to spotlight the stories of those who lack power and suffer because of that.
Well, that's wonderful, and I think absolutely a kind of important mission for sure. And I think that's why I've been so nervous about the news landscape, right? Because without journalism, you just don't have that ability to share and dig and get that information that an informed populace really does need. And well, good to hear that you're not just going to be focused on Frankfurt, but there's lots to dig in on Frankfurt for sure. In terms of, and one of the reasons we exist, I think the reason we became, Progress Kentucky and launched Kernels of Truth was to try to connect those dots between the policies that are, being enacted in Frankfurt and the impact they have on people, and the politicians that are bringing them to you. Right. I think the fact that we have got, and you guys are, of course, a nonpartisan news source. You're not, doing this with an axe to grind. I like to quote Stephen Colbert, the idea that I think that facts have a liberal bias, but that's just my own bias coming through. But I do think it's really important that we all have that same set of facts, right? And that we have that ability to just find, you're all welcome to your own opinions, but you're not welcome to your own facts. And we really do need journalists to kind of establish what those are for us, because me doing my own research on YouTube doesn't really give us that kind of shared understanding that we really need to have to understand how policies are working, how they're impacting people, as you said, the lack of policies. But Chris, any thoughts or questions that you've got for Jamie about the lantern?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for what you're doing, because we definitely need more and better credible news sources out there that try to be very fact oriented and and informing people and giving us good news. I'm curious when you're talking about trying to shine a light of accountability on lawmakers and politicians. How do you think that we have politicians now that are shameless? Like, if we want to look nationally, what's happening with Representative Santos, if we want to look more statewide, we could say that there was accountability because he's no longer our governor, but Matt Bevin, who lost narrowly 4 years ago. How can we get a better sense of accountability when there's this environment of shamelessness?
Well, I think, I mean, those are great examples you use there. I think if you look back through history, you'll find that there's always been a pretty high shamelessness quotient among politicians. And that, throughout history, people have been taken in by demagogues and corrupt leaders. It's in that respect, we're not unique or unusual. I think part of what's happening now is that, with social media, with the internet, a lie, an untruth, a distortion travels literally at the speed of light, right? So, I mean, in the past, it was just a lot. It was harder, I think, for I guess maybe when things moved a bit slower, the truth had a better shot at intervening in what people believed. But no, it's a great question you ask, and I have to have faith in an informed public, and and definitely it has become a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult, I think, for people to be well informed, because I think it's just hard for a lot of people. They see it on their computer, on their phone, and I guess we just need to do a better job of educating people how to be media consumers. Because as you said, this research that people do on YouTube is not really research. It's, there's a lot of stuff out there that, to me, what's really shameless is people who intentionally circulate misinformation, harmful misinformation to profit, to make money. And, that's all over the internet. And it looks just like the real stuff, And I think in some ways that's the dilemma of our era, is how we sort through just the content that's coming at us a mile a minute, every day, every hour.
Yeah. The folks who intentionally mislead people that claim that themselves to be a part of the media and trying to inform people, I really find that like sickening. It's a tough pill to swallow, and like you said, they're usually trying to peddle something to get money off of. And this may be my own bias here, but I see a lot of that on one end of the political spectrum, but not on as much on the other. And I was curious if you've seen it on. Do you think from what you've seen, is it fairly balanced on both ends?
No, I think your perception is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I hope that if at any point, we try hard here to get out the actual facts. Obviously, we've got a lot of opinions that we are sharing at the same time, but I do firmly believe, that idea that there's misinformation that's being intentionally spread is a pernicious idea. It is evil, and it is, it's something that is eroding our, ability to have kind of common ground and rational discourse about our nation and our politics. And you don't have to look very far to see how irrational people are treating our political system right now. And I am so glad that the Kentucky Lantern is now on the scene. I think that we will be able to beat back a flood of horrible YouTube videos with some new facts, some actual facts, some well-researched, the journalistic principles, if adhered to, can help us to, find that common light, to find those common facts, and fight about the actual how we affect the issues that we can agree are actually happening around us. But yeah, so I thank you so much. Any final thoughts or any suggestions about what our viewers should do to kind of engage with the Kentucky Lantern?
Just you can sign up and get a daily newsletter, an email that goes out 6 mornings a week. And of course we're on social media. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can go to the website KentuckyLantern.com. And you can, if you have ideas for stories, tips, email us at info@KentuckyLantern.com, and all of that information's on the site. And awesome. We'd love to hear from your viewers.
Great. Well, we give a hearty endorsement to this free news source. Don't have to worry about the paywalls, and what I love is the kind of Creative Commons license you're applying, so people can actually republish your work as long as they kind of link to it and share where it's going. Your email newsletter, I very much appreciate, and helps me to kind of stay informed with the important stories. So, Jamie Lucke, thank you again for the work you're doing, for taking the time out of your evening to come and share with our viewers. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right. So, and just so folks know, when I shared with our board of, who was going to be joining us tonight, people were very excited. They knew that Jamie was a phenomenal journalist and a wonderful writer, and has a great legacy here in Kentucky of just, doing great work. So glad that that she's landed with this important nonprofit news media source. So looks like Kimberly's had some technical difficulties, so it's just me and Chris to wrap up the show. A couple of things I wanted to do, though. We always like to do a call to action So I've got a couple of things I would really like people to do, and I'm kind of doing this one a little bit, calling an audible, but the session is kind of on a hiatus right now, right? So the legislature is in session, but they're on a break until the beginning of February. What I'm really hoping you can do, and Annabelle, hopefully you can find this, take the legislative comment line and make it, put it in your phone. So they are going to be back in session early February. They need to hear from you. So that's the number right there. It's 1-800-372 7181. So what you can do right now, because they are closed, it's depending on what time you're listening to this, if you're doing it live, they're closed. You can call them right now, 1-800-372 7181. Just give them a call, and then you can go ahead and hang up, and then you can go ahead and save that number, the legislative comment line. Save that in your phone, because we need to be engaging with our lawmakers. I would argue on a daily basis once they're actually back in session and voting on bills, because there's going to be a lot of bad bills, good bills that won't be going anywhere. We've already shared with you, that their first order of business was to drop the state income tax as much as they can this session, blow a big, huge hole in the state budget, so they can go ahead and cut services to the folks that need them most. A horrible idea. We need to call as soon as they're back in session and tell them to knock that off. Medical marijuana, very likely that'll stall out in the Senate unless we put a lot of public pressure on our senators. So call them about that. So lots to be doing. We will be, as soon as they're back in session, each and every episode, we're going to share with you an issue and a way to engage. But you got to have that number ready. So put it in your phone right now. That's I don't know. Chris, have you called these folks before? Have you called the legislative comment line?
Absolutely, yeah. I've called them and let them know, and I think I started during the Bevin administration when he was trying to really screw over teachers, and so that really hit home for me and got me more engaged than I was before. I always paid attention, but that really activated me even more.
Yeah.
And as far as a call to action on my end, I would say make sure to subscribe to your local newspaper. Support your local news folks. It's important. Like, if you live in a city or at least in the county, the city and county governments affect our lives a lot more than when you go down the line to state and national politics. They don't affect our day-to-day lives nearly as much as, say, your magistrate or city council member, and determining what the land use is, or covering the potholes, that way you don't get a flat when you drive over the road, and things like that. So definitely support your local news, and stay in tune with what's going on around you.
Yep. I concur completely. I'm so old school that I had the almost daily newspaper delivered to my door until it was so outrageously expensive. I just couldn't do it anymore because they clearly, I was having to pay for my paper to be printed. There was not the kind of group discount because but still very much supporting the local news source. And I do get the Sunday paper because I just love the actual feeling of the paper and I do not like screens. I prefer not to spend so much time on screens, but I guess that's probably where we're headed. But at any rate, so a couple things. We are back next week. Very exciting about the guests we're going to have. So Chris, you've actually lined up the guests. So you want to tell us who we can anticipate?
Yeah, so it's Matt Ruberg, who is with Rank the Vote Kentucky, who will come on and talk to us about ranked choice voting and how this process of bringing in ranked choice voting can actually create a healthier democracy for us, which I think we all want a healthier democracy. And so, stay tuned, listen to what he's got to say about the process. If you're not familiar with ranked choice voting, you may want to go and look up what that is. There, it's happening across our nation in various different levels, whether it be national or local. So it's nothing new in terms of in terms of it being used in our country, but it is something that would be new, to be implemented, say, across the state of Kentucky if we were to get something like that passed.
Yep. It definitely was used to great impact in Alaska recently. If you pay attention to national politics, that was a race that definitely was influenced. I think they've got it in Maine as well. Some other places where it does exist. But we'll hear from Matt and talk a little bit about that. And we've got a few other kind of good democracy ideas that we're really interested in promoting and pursuing. So that's definitely one of them, and we'll try to get the rest of them out as well with a bit of a deep dive with some experts. But I'm going to close out the show right now. Thank you, Chris, for joining us this week. I think next week we've got Willie. Maybe we'll have Kimberly if her internet is behaving and devices are adequately charged. But thanks for Annabel for producing this show. Always appreciate the time and energy she puts in to make sure that we've got the right graphics up and the right folks spotlighted. So a little bit about us. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State. We are organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, or CAVE, and are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Thank you, Nate, for the theme songs. You can find out more information and music at natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook, don't worry. You can rewatch shows and see our source links on Facebook, or our audio podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you do listen to this as a podcast and you do like the show, please do give us a review. That really helps the algorithms and more folks find out about what we're doing here for Kentucky. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. You can find them on the internet. And that's it. That's our show. We'll see you back here next week.